Hello, everyone out there. My name is Angie Peacock. I'm a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and a healing coach. Today, we are talking with Drew Linsalata of the Anxious Truth podcast. I first heard about him from my friend Sarah, who is also watching. She was getting help learning how to drive again after a long period of her own withdrawal experience. She was getting help and she was like, Angie, this is your problem. You have really bad anxiety. You got to go to Drew. And I was at that time, I was pretty resistant because just my own experience at the time was just so severe. I was like, I can't do these things yet. Like, I'll table it until later. But since then, I've listened to so many of his episodes. I have sent people to go listen. He's got some really great ideas. I mean, just you'll get into it. We'll see it in a minute, but he's life-changing. All of his principles, all the things that he's pulled from over the years, they're just so helpful. So welcome, Drew. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Hey, Angie. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So let me read his bio really quick, and then we're going to jump right into questions. But Drew is the creator and host of the Anxious Truth podcast, which boasts 3 million downloads and a thriving, engaged social media community. Drew is also a graduate student in clinical mental health counseling, a therapist in training, and a best-selling author, educator, and advocate in the anxiety disorder community. A former sufferer of panic disorder, agoraphobia, and clinical depression for more than 25 years. Before fully recovering, he has lived the experiences he speaks and writes about. I could have written that for myself. I mean, you said we're like twins. We're like twins.
Yeah. Okay. I wish we weren't, but yeah.
I know. I wish the experience wasn't so similar, but I also trained in clinical mental health just like you are. And I was a graduate student not too long ago. And I know, are you in the internship part or which part are you at?
That's just about to start and I can't wait. I'm tired of reading textbooks at this point.
Right. Now you get to do it. Awesome.
Yeah.
We need you. Okay. So let's just jump in. Can you just share a little bit about your background, how you suffered with anxiety, how you started to work on this? Tell me everything.
Yeah, I mean, you stop me at any time, but I'm sure that it's going to sound familiar to almost anybody listening. I wasn't an anxious person. I didn't think I was, at least. I was pretty bulletproof. And I was in my sophomore year of undergrad work a while ago. You see the gray in my beard. And everything was just going great. I was actually home for spring break and I had my very first panic attack. I did not know what it was. I interpreted as this is what it feels like when you die. It terrified me and I'm never going to forget that experience for the rest of my days. And I was a textbook example from that point on of going from a panic attack to panic attacks to panic disorder to agoraphobia. It was really ugly. And I was in and out of that for many, many years, 25 years of my life, where I would find myself homebound. I would find myself struggling with horrific, like we would call major depressive disorder these days. And it sucked. I had a bunch of OCD tendencies that would pop in there, intrusive thoughts, all of the things. It was no fun. It was no fun.
Yeah. I saw somebody yesterday who basically explained it like that. It was a panic attack, then it was an airplane flight, then it was being stuck in the airplane. And next thing you know, it just spirals out. So like, can you explain what is anxiety? What is the difference? I want to be upfront. I am so resistant to medical language a lot of the time, like when we call it a disorder. So can you just take me through all this? What's anxiety?
I'm with you. I don't like the term disorder either, but it's the term we have. And it helps us differentiate between like regular anxiety, which every human being is going to experience. It's just part of being alive. And the other type of anxiety that we're talking about. So anxiety is just a stress response. It's a response to a stressor of some kind or some sort of pressure that's placed on us. That pressure could be external. It could be internal. It could be the way we're feeling. It could be relationships, money, and anything, the weather, our health, doesn't matter. And it's a part of the warning mechanism. It's part of the threat detection system. It's part of what's supposed to keep us safe and out of the weeds. And it serves a purpose in our lives. But then sometimes that mechanism goes off the rails a little bit. So for somebody like me, where I had a panic attack, which was an adverse experience that I did not really want to repeat, I started to interpret the state of being anxious itself as a danger. And then I began to anticipate the next one and worry about the next one. And if I had a panic attack in my car, I wouldn't want to drive anymore. If I had a panic attack in the supermarket, I wouldn't want to go there anymore. If I had a panic attack at work, I didn't want to go to work anymore. And so the mechanism where we start to develop that disordered state of anxiety, which literally just means out of order. Literally, it doesn't mean disease. It doesn't mean broken. I will die on that hill. It does not mean disease. Sorry. I'm going to fight that war forever.
Amen.
It basically essentially is have a bad experience. Don't want to repeat it. I get it. Avoid. life gets smaller, 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 smaller. We get full of rituals and habits and behaviors designed to try and keep us safe from feeling a certain way. And it snowballs from there.
I think
That's the
that was,
disorder state.
yeah, I think that was one of my biggest breakthroughs with listening to some of your episodes was like, I'm not really afraid of an airplane. I'm afraid of my feelings when I'm in an airplane.
That's
Like
huge.
there was a huge difference for me. Like, wait, it's not the plane, it's me.
Correct. It's not the highway. It's not my car. I was never afraid of the car or the highway. I was afraid that I might panic when I was in the car.
Exactly. That was huge.
Yeah.
So, I don't know where can we start? Let's see. Let's
Anyway.
talk about all the things that people try. Okay. So recovery for me was EMDR, EFT, CBT, CPT twice, prolonged exposure therapy that completely traumatized me even more.
Mhm.
Lots of talk therapy. What else? Acupuncture, massage, craniosacral, all of the things.
Yeah, sure. I do like magnetic
Beds.
and cranial stimulation and all of
I've
the
done today. There is like a supplement or a treatment for everything.
correct.
So what did you try? What worked? What didn't work? What made you decide I can't do this anymore? Like, let's try something else.
Well, I mean, I think for most everybody, first of all, I think it's a pretty natural step for everybody, but it's also almost a required step. The first step is going to be a medical doctor. For almost everybody, the first step is I'm calling my doctor. And I did that when I had my first panic attacks. The doctor at the time meant well. He wasn't very well versed in what that was at all. He gave me an antihistamine, which would, sort of knock you out a little bit, and said, hey, here you go, you're good to go. So we first start by medicalizing it to a certain extent. We look for a physical problem. And then when we can't find a physical problem, then we start to just try to find ways to make those symptoms and sensations go away. And so most of the time, the standard advice when it comes to dealing with this type of anxiety, not I'm an anxious person because my life is stressful, this type of anxiety, is find your triggers and avoid them. Soothe at all time, at all costs. Make sure if you get anxious, you find ways to immediately stop it and get away from it. Make sure you change your diet so nothing triggers you. Make sure you don't get triggered by anything or anybody. Isolate yourself. Put this space in front of you. We try everything to not feel that way, which makes common sense, but it actually makes things worse because it is literally telling you that, yeah, you must never allow this to happen ever. And that's really a hard ask. It's a very hard place to try to be. So people try everything that would sort of make them feel better in the moment or try to prevent it from ever happening again.
Which keeps it going.
Well, listen, I'm going to die in the cognitive hill here. Like that's my theoretical orientation, and you can disagree, and that's fine. We're all allowed to disagree with each other. But from that standpoint, yeah, that literally makes it worse. So anybody who go to the mat and say, but I love my essential oils and I love my special diet and I love this and I love that. That's fine. Everybody gets to pick their choice, but it's really hard to reconcile why you are going to the mat for those solutions and also watching my YouTube videos or listening to my podcast.
Gotta have Drew in my ear when I go in the grocery store.
Yeah, it's really hard to reconcile. Okay, so what's going on? Well, sometimes life overrides my coping and soothing strategies because it always will. And then it's a disaster. I can't handle it, and all bets are off. So it's a Band-Aid in many ways. Many of those things are somewhat Band-Aids. They could be useful as part of an overall recovery program, but invariably they fall apart because life will override it and give you more than those things can stop. And then it's heartbreaking because they'll wind up in that situation where it's like, my anxiety is so severe that nothing will ever work for me. I'm broken, which is not true. I hate hearing that.
Okay, so let's move to the part about let me give a disclaimer first. So
Sure.
we have different populations. You work with mainly anxiety people, either on or off meds. I work with people mostly off meds that are coming off meds.
Yes.
So if you stumble upon this episode and you're on your meds, they're working for you, I have no opinion on that. I'm just
100%.
talking to my audience. Okay.
Yep.
So I want to be very sensitive to that. Also, my next disclaimer is when my population is going through withdrawal, benzo withdrawal, or antidepressant withdrawal, antipsychotic withdrawal, it can be super severe, as you have experienced and So I am really interested in that intersection between when you start coming out of withdrawal and you want to get your life back and you feel all this leftover yuckiness, how do you work with it? So I want to be sensitive to my crowd, the people that are like an acute withdrawal and they're just too severe and they can't quite do it yet. I'm not talking to you guys. I'm talking to the people that are ready. So first, Drew, can you tell me about your own antidepressant story,
Sure.
however much you want to share, and then that intersection?
Yeah, it's totally fine. The only reason why I say that I did 3 episodes of my podcast that tell the whole story and I've written about it. And the only reason why I say go listen to those, I'm not talking about it anymore, is just because I do have a mixed audience and I don't want to exclude anybody.
Yes.
But in this audience, I'm totally fine talking about it. So I was in the situation where I did not try a zillion different things. I mean, I did. I tried diet. I tried different things. Again, the one doctor who gave me an antihistamine, which still boggles my mind, but okay. That was like bullets off of Superman. And it just kept getting worse and worse, clearly. And I remember at one point I was so sort of broken down and beside myself that my wife took me to our general practitioner at the time. We had the same doctor, and he gave me the insulin speech. I'm sure that your audience is very familiar. If you were diabetic, you would take insulin. You just have a chemical imbalance. I didn't want to, but I was so beside myself that I literally said, fine, I will take the prescription. Can you knock me out for 3 weeks while this takes effect? I literally asked for that. Yeah. And so he gave me that. I was on Paxil. I will tell you that my SSRI was Paxil. He also gave me a benzo, which I refused to take. So I did not have to deal with benzo withdrawal ever because I was too stubborn to take it. And I thought it was a miracle drug for a while because about 2 weeks into taking it, I woke up one morning and my depression had lifted. Not entirely, but suddenly the world had some color in it. You guys probably understand what I'm talking about. Like my anhedonia was gone. And I'm like, oh, I will never forget that morning, Angie. Like to this day, I will give Paxil full credit for that. 100%. Yeah. And everything was wonderful. This was like the greatest invention ever until it wasn't. And I started encountering all the bad parts of the antidepressant for me. And 9 years of my life. And then when I decided I was done, and I've written about this, and my first book, by the way, I wrote in detail about this, and it's in my podcast. And that first book is free, by the way. Anybody who wants to just have it. I finally hit the point where I didn't want to live the way the meds were making me feel anymore. That's when I started going through the tapering process. I got bad advice. Cut it in half for 2 weeks and you're good to go. 9 years on Paxil. Yeah. And I knew the wheels were falling off for me because I had my last dose. And then all of a sudden I found myself uncontrollably emotional and crying at ridiculous things that I would have never thought about before. And then the waves of anxiety would come back just again and again and again. There was nothing I could do to stop it. It was, you tell me how much you want me to talk about here. It was,
keep going. Yeah.
It was, what I experienced was I had no idea this was going to happen. So I knew that you weren't supposed to just stop taking it because every doctor that I had over the course of the 9 years that would just literally phone in refills for me continually without even talking to me. Always said, don't ever just stop taking it. And if I would forget to take it for a couple of days, I would feel it. I would feel that weird depersonalized thing. I'd get a few little zaps here and there. Oh, that's right. I forgot to take my meds. I would take them again. Yeah. And when I stopped taking them, the wheels fell off emotionally. They fell off from an anxiety standpoint. I was starting to experience waves of crushing depression. I did not know what was going on. I had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
And again, I went back to my doctor, who's still my doctor now. We worked it out, and I love him and I respect him forever because he stuck with me and listened to me. But he told me, this is your chemical imbalance coming back. Oh, no. And I remember I was beside myself. He was concerned for my safety, which he should have been. And I was beside myself. And he said, you got to get back on the meds. I said, you put me in a box before you do that. The story, I was disconnected from everything. I did not like myself on those medications. And I said, you'll just put me in the ground. I'm not going back. And he sat me down and we had a heart to heart. And he said, you come to see me 2 and 3 times a week. If I tell you, if I tell you to come back tomorrow, you come back tomorrow. Amazing. And we did that for a long time as I went through that process. And to me, the intersection was understanding at some point, there is nothing I can do about this. Only time is going to fix this. And so I can just do the best I can do today, which in many days was not good at all. But I could do the best I can today. And I have to stop trying to fix this. That's what I learned a lot. And that was the antidepressant withdrawal part that came with me in my recovery from panic disorder and agoraphobia and OCD later. I was off the meds. Yeah. Those lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's the most confusing part for people, including myself. It was like, okay, because my diagnosis was PTSD, I don't like the D either, but and panic disorder, I had all of it, all of it. So then when I came off the meds, it felt like it had warped a little though. Like, this isn't what I remember. This is like way more extreme, way more like my symptoms were so severe. I was like terrified of them, which comes back to the danger thing that we were talking about earlier, where
Yeah.
like I am interpreting all of this as dangerous and it's going to kill me and I can't move or do anything. Otherwise it's going to make it worse. So I became scared of everything inside
Yes.
of my body. So it's like, I think for people in protracted withdrawal, they're trying to recover. It's like, okay, what's me? What's withdrawal? What's anxiety? Is it? So how did you figure that out? Or what did you
Didn't.
think about?
I stopped trying to figure it out. And that's a hard thing for me to say. In the middle of that struggle, I sound really rational about it now, but that was a huge struggle. And I know some of the best intention advice was, you need to go back on the meds. This is a problem. You just take this forever. This is a structural problem in your brain. And I refused to believe it at that point. I'm like, it's hurting me more than it's helping me, these meds. So whatever, that was my own experience, again.
Yeah.
But I think I stumbled upon a website called Paxil Progress. I don't know if anybody watching.
Everybody knows it. My
Everybody
good
knows
friend
Paxil.
Adele Framer, who started surviving antidepressants, I just interviewed her 2 weeks ago. She came from that website, so
Sure.
it's a long lineage of good people.
It is, yeah. So, and the people that I met there, many of which are still friends to this day, and the woman who ran that site, she's kind of out of it now, so I'm not going to say her name because I think she's sort of retired from that. But I owe her a huge debt of gratitude, because that community started to teach me. It taught me two things. I was surrounded by thousands of people who were struggling just like I was, but they were trying to fix it every day. Every day there was a new supplement, there was a new theory, there was a new, look at this paper that says that the fluorescent lights are messing with my GABA receptors. And, I heard all of it. And but nothing was getting better for them. And then there was the other half of the site that was kind of like, it's just time. You just have to be patient, which nobody wants to hear. I didn't want to hear it either. I'm impatient. That turned out to be the right one, though. And so what I learned was, I don't know which is anxiety. I don't know which part is my panic disorder and which part is physiological. It doesn't matter. I'll just do the best I can, even though I don't know.
I like that.
That's a hard place to be, but that's what I had to do.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's really such a rich topic, because I find there are some people that chase a cure. And I made up this thing. It's very not graceful, but I'll share it with you. I call it my 3 oh shit moments. So the first oh shit is, oh shit, my meds are causing me a problem. I need to get off of these. My second oh shit is, my doctor probably doesn't know how to help me. No, in fact, he doesn't. And I'm going to have to figure this out. And this is going to really be terrible. My third oh shit is, there's no cure. There's no expert. There's no doctor. There's no program. I have to figure this out. It's going to be me and my suffering up against the wall.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
And some people get stuck between like 2 and 3, because they're like chasing a doctor, finding another drug to fix it. And I find I always want to talk about that with coaching clients, like, tell me about that need to like stop this or to find something, because that's like, oh, I just see so many people get more hurt that way, or just stuck in a loop, but it is kind of backwards. It's like, it's me and my suffering. Even me, I was like, I'm either going to die from this or I'm going to heal from this. I don't know which one's going to happen. It's so uncertain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard place to listen. That's a really hard ask for anybody. So if you're struggling with the idea that, like, what do you mean there's nothing I can do? Surely I should be able to micromanage my hormones and my neurotransmitters. I understand why people do that. I just saw a large number of people for whom that was simply not working, and it was making things worse. And so I really didn't have a choice. I'm not some exceptional person. It's just like, what choice? I had no choice. No. This is my reality now. So what do I do with this? Yeah.
And I think it's like backwards of what mainstream tells us, is like, if you're struggling, you need to go get help right now.
Yes. You have to fix it. Fix it
right now.
Sadly, some things in life are not fixable this minute. Yeah. And I get it. When you're in the depths of this and you feel like it's never going to end and you feel like you're really suffering, it's easy to think, this is never going to end. I have to fix it. But in a way, some of the things that I leaned on was, well, listen, my brain knows a way. This is millions of years of ingenious evolution and design at work here. Let it figure it out. And it did. And it did. Yeah, over time it did. So
yeah,
very difficult.
It is hard. It's hard. And I think it's almost like a little revolutionary, and you have to be super courageous to take that path and to like come to terms with that. Like, wait, all the things I've tried up until this point have made me a little worse, or didn't help, or helped momentarily. They didn't. Now I'm kind of in a worse position. I'm like at the end of my rope, and I got to figure this out some other way.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you get to that place. Totally hard. Okay, so I guess let's take me through like some of the principles of anxiety recovery, Claire Week stuff.
Yep.
Let me share a story about me really quick to
Yeah.
kind of lead us there. But let me tell you what would happen. So I would go to a grocery store and my brain would start feeling my symptoms and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to pass out. My eyes are rolling back in my head. I'm going to hit my head on the floor. They're going to call 911. It was like a whole, I
Yep.
call this the withdrawal brain. It just takes off and it
Sure.
takes you on a freaking vacation and you're not in reality anymore. And then what do you think would happen? My anxiety would shoot up. I'd feel my symptoms more. It was a huge, so then I didn't start at your program, but I was starting with Rock Steady, which is the lady in Australia who works on balance and dizziness and vertigo stuff, because that was my main symptoms.
Right.
And so it was very similar and overlap with you. So what I started to do is I started getting curious, like what is happening?
Mhm.
What is happening when I walk in a grocery store? I just need to know. And I was going into my symptom rather than pulling out and being
Right.
scared of it. So then I would ask myself, okay, Angie, you're feeling all this stuff, but what else do you feel? And I was like, oh, my legs and my feet feel okay. It's just up here. That's crazy, you know? And then I would ask myself, what do you need right now? And almost inevitably, it was Angie, slow down. And you wrote the book called 7%
I remember 7% slower. I got that
7% slower.
from back in those days.
Did you?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I felt like everything's lining up. That sends a signal to my amygdala to hurry up and send danger signal, blah, 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 blah. And so then I would calm myself down very quickly. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not withdrawal. That's me. There's something that I'm doing here.
Yes.
And that was the moment where I was like, whoa, I can work on this. And I want to say it wasn't every day that it was like perfect and it was working, but more often than not, the more I practiced, it would work. It would take the edge off. I would not run out of the grocery store screaming.
Yeah.
So that was my own process. So take me through like how you started to figure this out, like what was happening with you.
It was very similar in the end, because the slowing down thing, like the initial roots of 7% slower came from my withdrawal experience, when I would realize like, oh, I am going into emergency mode here. And like, I have felt like this every day for the last 94 days, and I'm still here. So I have to stop treating it like it's an emergency. It's unpleasant. I hate it. I want it to be over, but it's not urgent, because the more urgent I made it, the worse things seem to get. So I share your experience. I realized that I was pouring gasoline on a fire. I didn't start that fire. Nobody did. And I couldn't put it out, but I certainly didn't have to pour more fuel on it.
I love the way you said that.
And that helped me a lot, because it didn't make me feel any better. It just helped me not feel worse. And that was always hard to say. Back in the days when I was involved in that community, you know, we would all share copiously with each other. Of course, you're trying to like help each other. And I remember getting a lot of pushback on that. Like, I stopped trying to fix it, guys. And I think it's making it better. And people would say like, well, that's ridiculous. Or they would get angry at me. And I understand that it's very emotional. I understand. But yeah, that was a big deal. Leave it alone was a thing I had to learn. And
just
practice.
let it be there. Like, just let it be there. Don't fight it so hard, or don't.
Yeah.
It's tricky. And I get it. Like some people, I don't want to touch it because I get it. Like I was there too. But well, anyways,
I would throw out that though is, and this was a valuable lesson for me too, and maybe it helps. And again, take what you need or want and leave the rest. It's fine. Can't hurt my feelings. But one thing that helped me also was to recognize that like, oh wait, I can't keep treating this like it's a vestibular problem. And now at 10 o'clock, it's a vestibular problem. At 11 o'clock, it's a neurotransmitter problem. At 12 o'clock, it's a gastrointestinal problem. No, I had to stop looking at it that way, because then it would start to lead you to like try to micromanage each of the things. Now I have to manage my dizzy. Now I have to manage this. Now I have to manage that. And that helped too. Just put a little distance.
I like that. Or or treat it as all the same thing. It's all just like a sensitive nervous system.
Right.
That's how I looked at it. Definitely. Like today it's manifesting like this. Tomorrow it's, not. That's crazy.
There's delay. I used to, listen, this is not scientific in any way. It was my conceptualization that helped me remember, like, I'm like, my brain is slow right now. My brain is not firing the way it's supposed to, because it's been disrupted and it's working its way back. So I'm going to see the world different. I'm going to feel the world different for a little while. Different, not dangerously.
Dangerous. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
let's talk about safety and danger.
Yep.
So I listen to all kinds of people. I listen to like Pain for You, all kinds, all about like sending messages of safety. I also think how that overlaps with your idea of safety people, safety objects, safety movements, all the micro, what do you call it? The micro avoidances?
Those are micro avoidances. Yeah, there's macro and micro avoidances.
Woo! When I listened to that episode just the other day, I was like, I still got a few of those, like moving when I'm in line at the post office, stop moving, just stand still, So can you talk about safety, danger, things that help improve safety, or what's bad about that? Like, what do you think about those topics?
Yeah. Again, hard sell, but I'm sorry. If those of you who follow me recognize Copper, he has a lot to say today. But so safety is a tough one because that anxious state, be it withdrawal related or not, is going to tell you danger, threat, whatever you want to call it, vulnerability, uncertainty, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so your natural propensity is to try to fix that. I want to soothe that. I want to feel safer and more secure. But when we do that and we call our partner or our parent or our friend that talks us down, and her voice is so calming and it calms me down, you are literally telling your brain, hey, thanks for the alarm. Look, I went and fixed it. Make sure you tell me tomorrow that I have to do that again. And that's hard because it sounds like blame. It's not blame. Nobody chooses to do that. But when we allow that feeling of safety, here's where the courage part comes in, which is the part I hate to have to say. You do have to be brave to do this. When you allow that feeling of unsafeness or danger or uncertainty or vulnerability, and you see that you do come out the other side of it, not optimally, but still intact, that is a very powerful experiential lesson that your lower part of your brain will ultimately get, because it doesn't hear words and images and memes and song lyrics. It doesn't know anything about those things. So I have to feed it experiences that say, look, I know you want me to save myself. I'm not gonna, and we're still gonna be okay. And over time, it gets that message.
Hi, Copper. Raider says hello. I got one too. He's drinking water. I had to press mute because it was like bloop, 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 bloop. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I'm thinking back to a couple of the times where I tried to do my exposures or cope with my whatever was happening, whatever you want to call it. And I would tell myself, like, let's end on a success. I don't want to run out screaming, so let's hope this goes well. But there's a couple times I had to abort mission and leave.
Happens.
One recently where I went on a boat ride with my friend from the movie Medicating Normal, and my brain was just like, what the hell is this? I'm on an ocean in an aluminum can. We're all gonna die. Like, my brain just didn't. I'm from the Midwest. We don't have boats like that. I've never been on a wide open ocean like that. I was like, oh my God. So I went and lay down for like 20 minutes and I was like, okay, just everything's fine. Like, there's nothing dangerous happening. And like you said, you have that the courage episode. Isn't it episode 8 or 9?
One of my earliest ones that
it's my favorite episode probably of all, because it was like, this is gonna suck and you got to have courage, and that's what it takes. Like, there's no more running, there's no more avoidance. I have to do hard things. This is my own recovery that I'm talking about. I have to do some hard things. It's not going to feel great, but I have to teach my brain that these things are safe. Yeah. So I just got back on that boat and I actually started having fun. It was fine, Yeah. So can you talk about, like, what is the practical steps of this kind of thing? What does this look like?
So this is where things get a little bit weird for people who follow along with me, because I have no acronyms. I have no steps. I try not to give you steps. In fact,
and you try not to share what you did, which I like.
And I try not to tell you what I did, because what I did and what you did might look different, but the principles will remain the same. Essentially, I'm kind of famous for saying do nothing. Now, nothing is an active process. You can't literally do nothing. It's an active thing, believe it or not. But basically the steps would be, all the things that you think you must do urgently right now, don't do those. Now, that's super easy to say. It's very, very hard to do. I will acknowledge that every day, multiple times a day. But that's essentially the best advice. Do nothing is like, oh, I see all the things that I usually do. I have to stop doing those things. And if you have to stop doing them one by one, or you lapse a little one day or a couple of days, everybody does it that way. It's okay. It's not perfect. But in the end, you have to know that, like, I have to drop this, I have to drop this, and that means I'm going to come face to face with the peak of the fear when I'm certain that I'm literally dying or about to have a psychotic break or about to pass out or about to say something horrible in church. I know all the things, and it goes past. And now on the flip side, you said on the backside of that, well, you had a great time. Now that's awesome. That's a great outcome. It's not always the outcome. I had a great time. But the win in that is the experience that says, I was afraid again that something horrible was about to happen, or that I couldn't handle this. It was too much. And look, nothing horrible happened. And I did handle it. That's the win. Even if it was, I had a miserable time the rest of that boat ride, but I handled it. That's the win. That's a win.
Yeah. And what
Yeah.
does that do to the brain? Is that neuroplasticity in action? Like, are we rewiring, or what is that? What's
Yeah, we
happening?
are rewiring. So it's funny. Back in the day, I might say like, well, we're unlearning that fear. I was wrong. Shouldn't have said that. I said, well, you can't unlearn something. You can only learn new things next to it, right? So think of all of the pathways that your brain has made that teach you to snap a rubber band or get your lavender oil or call for help or run home. Those are pathways, and we rely on those. When we do that thing that says, no, I'm not running home today, I'm just going to let this wash over me and go out the other side, that's a new pathway that sits next to the old pathway. And over time, we start to choose that pathway more and more. So some of the things that I always like to say, because it's really important, is you don't unlearn the fear. You're going to be afraid. You just learn how to get better at being afraid and not calling it a disaster. So it's so important to know that. And you said, like, I was put through a torturous exposure. If that isn't explained, exposure can 100% be a torture. 100%, because like, I'm just going to keep intentionally triggering myself for what? It keeps triggering. Yes, it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So we start to choose the different pathways because our brains recognize it is safe to choose the new pathway. You learn over time that you don't have to care as much. You can't turn off the caring, you can't turn off the fear, can't turn off hating it. But over time, you can place less urgency on that and choose the new ways.
And what I found, and what I found is when I'm going into that situation that it's like, oh God, I can't do this. This is so bad. Here comes my brain. Everything's too bright, too fast. Everything's moving. Everybody's talking. I'm going to die. If I just write it out and like, I kind of sit there, let the feelings be there. If I write it out, it's like a roller coaster. And I think you call that, well, Claire Weeks calls it float. What do you call it?
I don't like float, but I call it surrender. I use surrender all the time.
Surrender.
You know? Yeah, surrender.
I just
sit
there.
Word.
Yeah. And I hate it because to me, I'm really into, I have the Daily Stoic.
Huge fan. Got the workbook.
Huge fan. This is great.
Yeah.
I've said this probably to half of my coaching people. It's like you become a statue and you're in a boxing ring with your hands tied behind your back and somebody's kicking the shit out of you and you sit there and take it. It sounds cruel and unusual. It does. It sounds inhumane and it sounds backwards and antithetical to everything that our mental health system teaches today. And it's like, no, that's how I got through all this. Like when I couldn't sleep for 20 minutes a night for the first year, guess what? I surrendered to it. I can't sleep. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to lay here and get tortured.
Right.
What do you think about this? Like, it sounds inhumane as I'm saying it, but like, it is stoic. It's stoicism. Like I'm a statue.
You can literally draw a line from this type of, first of all, these aren't my principles. Like these principles have been around for a very long time, but you can draw straight lines from,
Hi, Copper.
Straight lines from things like acceptance and commitment therapy to CBT, all the way back to Zeno himself.
Yeah.
Let me let him out.
It's fine. Okay, go let him out. We'll just take a breather. It's all right. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Let me go check the comments and see if we have any questions. But if you have questions for Drew, please put them below and we will jump on them as soon as towards the end. Let me see.
And we're back. Where's my?
And we're back.
I'll have to let him back in too. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
He clearly really had to go out this time.
Yes.
So what I was going to say is these principles are woven into the great philosophies of the world, the great faiths of the world. These are not new principles. It does seem barbaric to a lot of people. I've been told I'm barbaric because I dare to suggest that we might be able to face what we fear and handle it. And one interesting bit of research that I came across last year was a study of actual therapists. This was done in the UK and in the US. And even trained therapists, qualified people who have learned these things, have heard about this and they understand it's the most effective way to treat these problems, but they feel like it's too much to tell people to do it. And so they don't use it. And they will say that. I know this is most effective, but I don't like telling my client to be uncomfortable. So it's a really hard sell. Yeah, it's a really hard sell, but it's always predicated on the idea that nobody's telling you to do anything dangerous. We would be crazy, right? Claire Weeks didn't write a book about how to do dangerous things. She wrote a book about how to do hard things. Even though your brain is screaming that it's dangerous, we have to rely on the fact that it's not. And the only way to know that is to go ahead and let the danger be there. the only way to know it.
Do it. Yeah. And actually leading up to the interview, I was talking to a therapist friend of mine and I was like, what is this that Drew is doing? Like, what could you pigeonhole it? Or could you say like, is this a little CBT? Is this a little PE? What is it?
Yep.
So what do you think it is? Like, what is it that,
A lot back, if you had listened to the early episodes of my podcast in 2014, it would be very CBT-ish. There was a lot of C in there. And I didn't talk about the B a lot, right? The behavioral part. But I would say that I probably closely matched with the principles of ACT now, acceptance and commitment therapy.
I like that.
Yeah. And so this is like the newer wave of CBT gets a bad rap sometimes because old school CBT was about thought challenging and trying to change the content of your thought, which now we know does not work. And there's a high relapse rate.
Yeah.
But instead of working on the content, let's work on our navigational skills and accept that people do struggle and suffer sometimes. They do. We can try to pretend we don't, or life hack our way out of struggle and suffer, which social media tells us we should be able to do, but we will struggle sometimes. We can handle that.
We can handle it. Yep, we can handle it.
Yeah.
You're making me think of one particular person who he was really struggling with insomnia. As you know, antidepressant withdrawal, benzo withdrawal, sleep is like the first thing to go. Everybody has problems with sleep. And it seems that it turns into its own monster. Like, if I don't sleep, I'm going to die, blah, 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 blah. And I know you've talked about there's tons of different kinds of anxiety. It's all the same principles. It doesn't matter which one it is. But it was an interesting conversation that we had where the person said, my wife is concerned, my trauma therapist is concerned that I'm flooding my system when I do this. It's too much of an exposure. So to me, when I heard that, I was like, okay, I understand where they're coming from. That makes sense. But how else do you expect to work through it? Because melatonin and Lunesta and Ambien has hurt you. So at some point, you do have to come to face with your fear of not sleeping. So tell me about, what do you think about all this, like flooding? And
this is a tough one. So the flooding has different definitions depending on where in the world you are. Flooding for some people in the UK, flooding is when your exposure causes a panic attack, like the level 10 fear. That's called flooding. We wouldn't call it that here. Flooding is, I'm going to put myself into a situation that I have no escape from, or such an extended escape. So if you are housebound right now, you haven't left your sofa in the last 6 days and you don't go more than a mile away. Flooding would be, I'm going to get on a cruise ship and go to the Caribbean. Don't do that. Very bad. But flooding is not necessarily, I'm going to allow myself to panic. If it's planned, if you have some professional help that coaches you through that and it helps you understand why you're doing it and why it's not dangerous, it's incredibly effective. But sometimes flooding is used like, no, I can't allow that to happen. That's too much for me. But and listen, anybody who's lived through traumatic background and that sort of stuff, my heart goes out to you. That's real. That is not, we don't discount that, right?
Right.
Even in trauma recovery, the principle at play is repeated exposure. Now, that exposure might look different for people who are resolving trauma, but first you establish safety, you rebuild the trauma narrative, and at some point you are moving through that.
Right.
So there's no such thing as an escape that doesn't go through the experience, even in trauma recovery, unless everybody gets to make their personal choice. I choose not to do that part, and I'm just going to live in the make a safe place. And that's okay. If that works, I would never take it away from anybody. Right. It's a tough one. Hard to address in just like a 30-minute video.
I know that's a hard question, but I always wonder, like, I think it's especially me and looking back at all the different things that I've tried, I was playing it so safe. And I feel like if I would have known some of this stuff at the beginning, I could have saved myself so many years of chasing treatments and chasing my own tail. Like, oh, why didn't somebody just tell me this 15 years ago? Like,
because
just go through it.
It's a really hard sell.
It is. I get it.
This message is the hardest message to deliver. I think that's why you don't hear about it as much.
Yeah. And I think that's why I resist, because I was talking to my therapist friend about this too. I was like, I just hate all this like anxiety disorder and disorder language, like, and then she's like, why do you hate it so much? And I was like, I think because this is such an inner process. I'm not going to someone, maybe I have a coach, or maybe I listen to podcasts or a book, but it's really like me and my suffering and being curious and surrendering and writing it out. And then me teaching my brain I'm safe. That's an inner thing. It's not like a disorder, like a go to someone for treatment kind of thing. It's backward, it's opposite of that.
I do get it. Well, I mean, we need the language in a way to have a common clinical language and
I know
to
what you mean. Like we're pointing, like, what is this?
But at the same point, listen, let's take it. It's literal disorder. Like in normal, regular anxiety, the threat precedes the anxiety.
Right.
We are literally out of order. The anxiety precedes the threat and becomes the threat.
True.
It's a literal term. And one thing I don't understand, since we're talking about it, is I know people hate the word disorder sometimes, but they love the word heal. Like you're wounded or
I'm a
broken,
healing
you have to
coach.
fix
Yes.
something. Right.
Yes.
Maybe you're not healing, maybe you're learning. What if that?
I know. I like that. I heard you say that the other day, like you're learning. In that made me think PTSD. I was like, that's not a disorder. It's that I learned threat and I
Right.
learned to watch for it and I learned to scan for it. To me, it's PTSLD. You know what I mean?
I mean, listen, it's neither
I
one
know,
or
but I'm
the other,
saying like it's fear
but I get it.
learning. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like people hate disorder and things like that, but they also like to say they have a mental illness. Okay, but
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
gets to pick their own path. But they do love the word healing. And I'm like, but yeah, but that indicates that you're sick or something is
Something
wrong
was
with
something
you.
wrong.
You have
Right.
to fix. Maybe you just have
Yeah.
to learn something different.
Just learn something new. Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
All
easier
right.
said.
It is. Okay. So I think we hit most of everything. What can you tell us what you offer? What is your community like? What are the resources that you have built for
You just
somebody that doesn't know about the anxious truth?
you heard it. So this is it. You pretty much it. I don't have a lot to offer, I will admit. There's not a lot out. I mean, so I do a pod, The Anxious Truth comes out every week. I do another podcast with Josh Fletcher called Disordered that comes out every Friday. That one's going really great. That's kind of what I wish The Anxious Truth had been in 2014. So Disordered is better, I think. But anyway, I've written my books. There are 3 books, one of which is completely free. The other one, The Anxious Truth, is sort of the recovery guide. 7% Slower is about, it's actually a mindfulness manual on the down low. It's a book about how to be mindful without
I
talking
saw
about
that.
mindfulness. And I have other books in the works, but I have to finish school first.
Gotta
And
get done
I
in school.
have some very basic courses and workshops. None of these are like, take my course and find peace, or take my course and be healed. They're just psychoeducational material. If you want a deeper dive, yes, I have that sort of stuff too, but I don't really have a lot to offer. I will admit.
Oh,
I
it's
don't
a lot. Are you kidding me?
It's a lot, but
Well, so when you finish school, what's the plan? Like, what does the future of Anxious Truth look like?
it'll keep going. I mean, until the sun will burn out before I run out of things to talk about, clearly. Because so my audience tells me what to talk about.
Uh-huh.
So that works out. And I just enjoy it. This is a thing that is professionally interesting to me now, just like it used to be very personally interesting to me. So I will finish, I will get licensed, and go from there. I mean, I'll be able to practice in New York. The counseling compact means I'll probably be able to practice in at least 20, 25 or 30 states at that point. But I don't know. I'm making it up. Have always been making it up as I go along. And to a
I do
certain
the
extent, I
same.
still kind of am.
I do the same.
I still kind
That's
of am.
awesome. It's like, what am I doing? I don't know. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
don't know.
cool.
This is what I'm doing
That's,
today.
that's
So
it. All right. So we're starting to end here, but do you have any, I'd like to share like successes, hope, like things that you've seen people transform. Like let's end on hope. What kind of successes and hope can you offer?
oh, every day. I mean, I think it's one of the most gratifying parts of this thing that I do. And you do it too. So you see it. To see somebody go through what has become a pretty easily definable process, which starts with like, I'm worse than everybody else. I have no hope. You don't know what you're talking about. And I don't need to be right, by the way. It's not about my message, it's about this way to go about it. To like, well, I've tried everything else, so let me at least consider this. To like, okay, I get it, but this is way too scary. You don't understand. It feels real. It feels dangerous. I'm not capable of that. And then down the road, coming back into the community and saying, oh my goodness, I actually did the things. And when you see people the first time, like your boat experience, I didn't run and I got through it and I was okay. Like, and they feel like superheroes. It happens every day. I have the privilege of seeing that every single day. I've done a bunch of success stories on the podcast if you want to check them out.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I'll have somebody on who came through. But everybody who was there either went through withdrawal or they went through periods where they felt, I am incapable of getting better. This is never going to get better. And then they did. So if you're in a dark place, it doesn't mean you'll be there forever.
Love it. That's it. That's why I do this too, because I get to watch people's healing. And it can be simple little things like Angie, like a year and a half ago, I'm thinking of a couple people. They're not leaving their house. And now they're going on a cruise ship or on vacation with their husband.
Amazing,
I
right?
see it all the time. I get to watch it. It's
It's
awesome.
always great. But you know, it's even cool.
Awesome.
There's that. Those are the huge successes, of course, over the long term. But sometimes it's as simple as, guys, I ate some walnuts today. And we all know how hard and scary that was, but that's a huge win for that person. And those add up. So
that's it. Okay, I'm checking the questions really quick, but I don't understand this one. How do we deal with the trauma of feeling that we're not safe because of our own thoughts of self-harm? So not harm. So can we talk about that? Because that's, oh gosh, it's such an important topic. I have tons, everybody that's in my cohort right now, very bad intrusive thoughts, obsessive. Some
Mhm.
of them are stuck on counting, the way that people talk, all the thoughts. So talk about like when you're scared of the inside.
So when you're scared of the inside, first of all, everybody's scared of the inside. And in the end, it all comes down to the thoughts because it's the interpretation of how you feel. But those intrusive thoughts, here's a good rule of thumb. And believe me, I used to have, because I would have the benzos and never take them. So I was just that really frustrating dude.
That was your safety avoidance.
And yes, and I would drive around with them for years and never take them. It was ridiculous in the end. But there were times when my brain was going through those periods where I would start to think, I don't want to hurt myself. And I'm guessing this person will understand this. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm terrified of hurting myself. What if I think of doing it and I can't control it and it becomes something I just do? And I would ask people, hide these pills. I would not want to go in the kitchen where the knives were. It's if you are terrified of that thought, that's your clue. It's nothing. I don't want to do this, but I'm afraid that a thought will become an impulse, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I don't remember which episode of the podcast I had Marty Seif on the podcast, and he explained all that. Thoughts don't become impulses. They don't. That's not how this works. You won't think of hurting yourself and then do it against your will. It doesn't happen.
Right. Right. There's like I always explain it like there's a part of you that's healthy and knows that that's not right. And that part is the one that keeps you safe. It's not going to make you do it.
Yeah. And I think just this is where you get into that whole thing, which is really hard for people in that state to understand, because some of those thoughts are about hurting yourself, some about hurting other people, some about like, what if I hurt somebody I didn't remember? Like that OCD thing kicks in hard sometimes in withdrawal, for sure. Just because I'm having a thought doesn't mean it is actually connected to reality in any way.
Exactly.
Human brains create thoughts all day long without bounds. They can make up whatever they want. They just seem really important to you when you're in a sensitized state.
Mm-hmm. And I always make the analogy, there's no difference between I need to go to the bathroom and I'm going to fall over and hit my head and they're going to call the ambulance. Like it's just the meaning and the fear that we put attached to each thought that is what is creating the problem. It's not the thought. The thought is neutral. Right.
So a good response to that would be, oh, I'm thinking again. Oh, I'm thinking now at the moment you're thinking about self-harm in some way, which seems like, what do you mean? That's not just thinking. No, it actually is, believe it or not. Oh, I'm thinking again.
Yeah. But then that makes me think of our mutual friend who said we wouldn't react to the micro thoughts because the macro action of what's happening is like, it's all bullshit.
Yeah. And so, we can laugh.
I think it's a paradox. Like
it is a paradox in a way. All of this is paradoxical. You would think that the way to respond. So when this person says, how do I get over that fear that I'm not safe because the thought is about harming myself? Common sense would say, oh my God, get to safety, call 911, make sure it gets them, do something, have somebody with you. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works because it doesn't make any common sense. This is almost all backwards. Almost all of it is backwards from common sense.
Yeah, it's just a false alarm telling you something's dangerous when it's not.
Right.
And we're going with it. And the way to, I think I don't want to use the word heal anymore now. The way to break that connection is to go into it and surrender and be curious. Don't run, don't avoid, don't keep safe. Like it's the opposite.
Right. I'm thinking again. And so if I treat this as an urgent situation, I better hide the knives because I just had a thought that I might accidentally hurt myself or against my will. You are saying this is an urgent situation, do something about it. When really and truly it's like, oh, I'm thinking again. This makes me very uncomfortable and afraid, but I don't have to act as if I'm truly in danger right now.
There you go.
Very hard.
I love it.
Yep.
Hard, easier said than done, but worth it.
Yeah. Look at the clues around. If you're in a community, like you have a relatively active community, look at the difference. You're afraid of self-harm. That person's afraid of harming their children. That person is afraid they're having a heart attack. That person is afraid they're having a psychotic break. You would look at the person afraid of the psychotic break and say, yeah, it's okay. You're safe. I promise. But why, how come your fear or your thought is special and that doesn't apply? So look at what you would tell other people and then try and apply it to yourself as best as you can.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Drew. Thank you for all your work. I'm excited to see where you keep going. I like following your podcast has done a lot for me personally. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate my friend Sarah, who's in the comments. Thank you, Sarah, for introducing me to Drew.
Thanks, Sarah.
There you go. So do you have any closing words, closing thoughts to share with anybody in withdrawal in our audience? Anything? I mean, you said so much. I don't want to. Yeah.
Oh, it's a lot. I mean, I don't know. I know how hard it can be, but it doesn't have to be forever. Try not to treat it like it'll be forever. Just do the best you can today. That's a win.
Love it. Okay. So all of Drew's links are in the comments. They're in the captions on YouTube. Go visit his stuff, listen to it. It's so great. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Drew. Good luck with school.
Thanks,
Don't call me if you have any problems in internship. It's so hard. But it's a good experience. I love grad school. Are you social work or LPC? Which one? LPC.
I'll be LMHC in New York. It's
LM.
LMHC, licensed mental health.
Licensed mental health.
LPC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Okay. Good luck with everything.
Fine. I'm gonna go do some reading now.
Congratulations. Yeah, go have fun. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.